All right. So I'm recording this meeting so that we can post it online afterwards for those in the community who couldn't make it tonight. I will also post the presentation slides onto the project webpage, which is pgh2o.com/Haverhill. And if I'm able to take any notes during the meeting, I will also be posting those to the project webpage after the meeting. So during the presentation, we'll ask for those of you on Zoom to mute yourselves if possible so that we can hear the presenters as they're speaking. And if you have any questions during the presentation, you can type it into the chat box, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then when the presentation pauses, we can take questions from the chat that have come up during the presentation. And then you can also come off mute and start asking questions and we can answer as well. So we can have some verbal Q&A. Next slide, Ryan. So for the agenda tonight, we're going to go through some introductions really quick. We're going to do an overview of the stormwater situation in Pittsburgh. We're going to provide an overview of this Haverhill Stormwater Improvements Project and share some of the preliminary designs. And then we'll go into the question and answer and discussion. So the project owner for this project is the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. The design project manager is Ryan Quinn, who's with us here tonight. The stormwater inspector, who's also part of the project from pwsa, is Samantha Young. And my name is Lynn Hendricks, the Education and Outreach Associate. The property owner is the city of Pittsburgh. The project manager here tonight is Michael Panzita. The project designer is Ethos Collaborative. The project manager here tonight is Barton Kirk. Damon Weiss is also a project manager on this project. And then Matt Zimbelli is a project landscape architect. And then one of our project partners, a big one, is Upstream Pittsburgh. And Rose Flowers is here tonight, the community engagement manager. And Aaron Brady is also here as programs assistant.
So like Elaine said, my name is Ryan Quinn. I'm a project manager with Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. I'm going to speak for a couple minutes about sort of the big picture in Pittsburgh and what challenges we face regarding stormwater and what we're doing to address stormwater opportunities. And then I'll hand it over to Barton, who will kind of jump into the rest of the presentation. We're going to try to keep it manageable, about half an hour or so. We'll have time for discussion afterwards. So I'll just jump in here. The first thing that I really want to highlight is that Pittsburgh sewers have been in service for a long time. Pittsburgh's first sewers were built in the mid-1800s. By 1908, about 25% of the total miles of sewers in our city had already been built and are still in use today. And you can imagine when those sewers were built over 100 years ago, our city was very different, had a lot more green space, had a lot fewer people living in it, and a lot less impervious surfaces. And that's one of the major challenges that we face when we look at our city today, is that we have so much more hard surfaces like roads, building footprints than when the sewers were built. So that system is not sized to take on the challenges of development. And also today we're seeing increased rainfall, which is only making those challenges more frequent. And this is going to be really just a kind of a brief sort of issue statement, is that when it rains in Pittsburgh, most of the areas are served with combined sewers. So rainwater is entering the same pipe as sewage water, and that's often causing those pipes to overflow sewage into our region's rivers and streams. And it doesn't take much to cause those overflows. Under an inch of rainfall can trigger overflow events, and during a year, billions of gallons of untreated sewage is entering our rivers and streams. So what is PwSA working on? So historically, PwSA had been in charge of the sewer infrastructure and the water infrastructure in the city, the buried pipes. So when it rained, stormwater entered the PwSA system through a catch basin. And at that point, it was a management by PwSA. In 2019, pwsa became a stormwater authority in addition to a water and sewer authority. So that kind of represents sort of the increased investment that we're making in partnership with local community groups, with the city of Pittsburgh, to address the stormwater challenges that we're seeing. So tonight's presentation will kind of talk about one of those projects that is a collaboration between the city of Pittsburgh, Upstream Pittsburgh, and pwsa. And our goal is really to create projects that are reducing the amount of water that's entering the sewer system during rainfall, and also making sure that those projects, when built, are maintained over time. So that's one of the themes that we'll talk about tonight. Hand it over to Barton.
Good evening. I'm Barton Kirk with Ethos Collaborative, a civil and ecological engineer and project manager on this project. The project that we're going to talk about tonight is in the East Hills and sort of the edge of the East Hills and Homewood neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. And it's actually sort of a tale of two sites that are isolated but connected. And so we're going to talk a little bit how these two sites relate to each other. But one of them is on Haverhill Street, and sort of extends the intersection of Haverhill and Oakwood Street. And the other is at the intersection of Oakwood Street and Batavia Street. And we'll get into why these two sites are important and how they relate to each other. The scope of this project has really been trying to address some issues that have occurred with both city property, a landslide that occurred on the Haverhill Street that has significantly impacted an existing green stormwater infrastructure site that was constructed at the intersection of Oakwood Batavia in 2016 and 2017. And actually here tonight, we have one of our project partners is going to share with us a little bit how that green infrastructure site and green infrastructure project first developed. So we have Aaron Birdie here from Upstream Pittsburgh, who is just going to give us a little bit of the history and background as to how this site was selected, the partnership that was involved to realize that project, and sort of the history of how we've gotten to this site today.
All right, thanks, Courtney. And thanks for having us tonight. Aaron Birdie here from Upstream Pittsburgh. I'm also joined by my colleagues Rose Flowers and Lizzie Santola over there. So yeah, a little background on the Rosedale Runoff Reduction Project. It was initiated in 2014 as a sustainable stormwater management program within East Hills, Homewood, and parts of Penn Hills in what was delineated as the Rosedale area. All of the water in this area drains to one central point, which during dry weather flows down to the Allegheny River and is treated by Alcosan, and during rainfall events, it actually overflows into the 9 Mile Run stream within Frick Park. So this area was kind of delineated as the top of the 9 Mile Run watershed during wet weather events, and is why we started doing this work in this community. So I said that this area, the Rosedale area, includes parts of Homewood, East Hills, and Penn Hills, and it was determined that it's a high yield sewer shed, as we call it, with 25 million gallons of untreated sewage flowing into 9 Mile Run basically every year. So the whole goal of this project was to infiltrate and eliminate as much stormwater from running off and going into the sewer system as possible. So the first phase of that project included some residential solutions for stormwater management, such as rain gardens, rain barrels, things of that nature, that were distributed to residents through grant-funded program. This also included street side tree pits to essentially take some of the runoff running down the street and infiltrate it in those areas. And that brings us to why we're here today. Two large-scale projects that were completed in 2016. The Childhood Center and the Oakwood and Batavia Green Infrastructure Facility. So this is a nice timeline that Court put together. Thank you very much for doing that. That kind of identifies, again, the process of this, design, construction, and then what brings us to where we are today. So went over these first two points on the timeline a little bit. When in 2016, the facility was completed, constructed by PJ Dick Construction, and that was led by us and designed by Ethos in collaboration with all the partners that you see on the right here.
Hey,
What's
what are
that?
you doing
Okay, so in 2017 and 2018, we invested in real-time monitoring system that was developed on and the Oakwood side of the facility. The Batavia side was installed first, with the Oakwood side being delayed by the first signs of this landslide that occurred on Haverhill Street. And that's in 2018, that summer is when we first reported that. So in 2018 to now, there were temporary measures installed to control that erosion. I think there were a few Jersey barriers put on Haverhill Street, and some hydro blocks were installed to retain the sediment from flooding the facility on Oakwood and Batavia Street, which leads us to where we are right now, which is the remediation of the site and the known issues there. So I will hand it to Barton.
Thank you, Aaron. So as Aaron explained, this design process really sort of began in 2014. The site was identified as a high yield, high capture site at the intersection of Oakwood and Batavia. The original concept for this actually looked at developing green infrastructure in two phases at this site. What was ultimately constructed were stormwater planters at the intersection at the corner of Oakwood Batavia, and stormwater street tree pits along the western edge of Oakwood Street as well. And this was, as Aaron indicated, an extensive and collaborative process across city agencies, foundations, community groups within the groups working together both at Stormworks, Junior Green Corps, Operation Better Box, Junior Green Corps, and PJ Dick. The elements that are take a minute to sort of discuss some of the elements that go into a green infrastructure like this, and specifically at the Oakwood and Batavia site. We have stormwater planter beds, which essentially create it's a curved area that creates a depression in the street that allows stormwater to be intercepted by a planted bed that's constructed with specially engineered soils that allow that water to infiltrate down into the soil. It slows that stormwater down and allows it to either soak into the soil or be slowly released either to underground storage, as we sort of see here at subsurface stormwater storage on the right. That's actually the subsurface storage that's installed at Oakwood and Batavia. or it can also be slowly released back to the pwsa sewer system after the rain events. Another piece that we'll talk about, sort of anatomy of green infrastructure, we'll talk about sediment forebase, and that's actually part of the stormwater planters that it's at the sort of the front end that intercepts sediment and debris that gets washed off the street and helps to filter that out before it gets to the planted bed. So it's an important piece of the function of the stormwater planters, and it's something that we certainly are going to focus on. As I mentioned before, some of this green infrastructure also includes, so you see stuff at the surface, but there's also infrastructure that is often implemented below ground, and that often helps to capture a really significant volume of stormwater. So this system collectively, what's currently in the ground, has the ability to capture about 2 million gallons of water annually over the course of the year. So
recording in progress.
So, Ms. Scott, it's great to have you join us.
Thank you. I didn't know you were gonna have me on the line.
That was a surprise for you.
Yes, it is.
We have, so this project, through the process of planning in 2014, construction 2016, we were able to realize this system to sort of reshape the streets at the intersection of Oakwood and Batavia and create a system that was capable of capturing a significant volume of stormwater. And so after construction in 2017, we had a fully functioning and vibrant system. As Aaron indicated, in 2018, not long after the system was constructed, we had a significant landslide that occurred on Haverhill Street, which ended up washing literally tons of soil and sediments into the stormwater planters that were down the street. This had a host of issues, both initially, but then continued to be due to the seep that caused the landslide initially continuing to flow over time, and even to today continues to wash sediments both from the landslide as well as debris and is eroding the street and hillside on Haverhill. In
Can I
addition,
tell a quick story on that?
certainly. Are you okay with that, Elaine?
Yeah, I'm hoping
Yes,
the owl will catch your
I
voice.
was coming home from East Hills and I turned on to Oakwood. And I'm looking, I'm saying, oh my God, what's happening here? And there was a river of mud coming down Oakwood. So I took my phone out and I drove real slow up the street and just, copied it in. And I sent it to Brenda. And I said, Brenda, do you all know what's happening? And they didn't.
Yeah.
And that's how, and then we contacted the city, got them out there too. But it was a hot mess.
And I'll be honest, it continues to be. a bit of a
Oh, yeah.
hot mess.
It's not quite as bad as it was, because when I say a river, I'm talking about
Yes.
it was this deep and it was thick like gravy.
I mean, you could see just in this image, you could see how much earth is missing from, and the only place that had to go was
Downhill.
downhill.
They killed the plants in there and everything.
And in addition to that, there have been a number of other issues that have occurred over the 4 years since the landslide. We've had repeated vehicle strikes, driving into the planters, taking out trees. Here you can see this is what was the monitoring flume that was measuring the flow. So what Aaron talked about, we were monitoring the impact of the system from a stormwater standpoint. And a car drove into the planter and destroyed the equipment. So that's, part of, part of what has brought us here today. So one of the things, we were hired earlier this year by pwsa to assess the site and develop designs for addressing both the landslide as well as remediating and renovating the green infrastructure at Oakwood and Batavia. And part of that process as we go through that is an intensive site investigation. We look at the conditions that caused it. So part of that is doing what's called a geotechnical investigation, where we look at the conditions of the existing soils and bedrock. We investigated on Haverhill Street to understand the ability of the soils in that area, televised the sewers to understand, to get a good look at the existing infrastructure and the condition of the existing infrastructure, as well as evaluating what's happening at the surface through survey and site assessment practices. So just looking at this sort of plan overview, you can see Haverhill Street above, the city lots where the landslide occurred. And basically from that point, there are hillside seeps that have been identified that have been saturating soils at various points along the hillside of Haverhill. And is what led to the landslide. And then that sediment has been continuously carried down Oakwood Street to the green infrastructure at the intersection of Oakwood and Batavia. And that isn't the only problem. It isn't the only issue we identified. There is also, in addition to that, a tremendous amount of trash and debris that continually impacts the infrastructure. There's also oil and debris that's coming from the other direction on Batavia Street. And so we wanted to assess all of these things and develop preliminary designs to address all of them collectively. So starting first at the top of the watershed, the top of the project area, this is Haverhill Street. And so we're looking at a number of improvements to Haverhill. The first place we start is addressing the landslide area here. We've proposed a rock buttress for that. I'll get into a little bit more detail of what that looks like. To address the seeps along the hillside, we have what's called a roadside seep blanket. We plan to add some additional storm inlets along there to collect both stormwater and seep water to really get it off the street, to address the icing issues and the erosion of the asphalt that we've seen over the last few years. We're also taking this opportunity to consider realigning the roadways slightly, as particularly the guardrail, to address some safety concerns along there, and make sure that we still have a pedestrian connection to the stairs at the far end of Haverhill. So there are existing pedestrian stairs at the lower end and upper end of Haverhill Street.
Question.
Yes.
I know we're talking about Haverhill. What are we doing on Wilkinsburg? Have we thought about anything? Because if you don't address Wilkinsburg, Haverhill is only going to be partially addressed because you've got a underground spring at Wilkinsburg Avenue. And it's right, I'm trying to think, starts with a V, the name of the street coming down.
Bennett?
No, Frankstown's here, the next, Bryson.
Oh, right.
Wilkinsburg Avenue runs this way. Bryson runs this way, down to Haverhill. If you don't address the underground spring that sits above Bryson, that runs across Wilkinsburg Avenue, and then over and down Bryson, you're only addressing part of it. So if you're not aware, let me make you, this is my neighborhood.
Yes, yes, understood.
Let me make you
Yeah.
very aware. You're talking about icing there.
Mhm.
You should see the icing on Wilkinsburg Avenue. it's a sheet of ice in that area in the winter time. That spring runs 24/7. The only thing I can see, and I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
You've almost got to build a gully next to the road and put some type of barrier to keep cars from slipping into the barrier to catch up water and possibly run it another way. Because right now it comes off the hill, comes out of the hill, down the side and across the pavement. And if you ever want to meet me up there, you don't even need to meet me. All you got to do is go look.
Yeah,
You'll see the water.
that's much appreciated. That is not something that we have observed, so.
You need to.
Yeah,
Well, I've heard that multiple times at the East Hills consensus group meetings too, from folks that are concerned about that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and it, doing what you're doing at, at Bryceland and the street that you're working on.
Local potato.
Oklahoma or Haverhill?
Haverhill.
Haverhill, yeah.
That's great. But when you go up past Crescent, if you don't deal with that aspect, it's gotta be dealt with sooner or later.
Yeah,
So it's either deal with it now while you all are giving it out money, or
yeah. That's, yeah, I'm still trying to place it geographically. I'm gonna have to look at it further. It certainly has not been within our purview.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that. Yeah, so some of the strategies that we have developed for Haverhill Street generally are typical of the types of strategies that are used to mitigate seeps along the roadside. Not knowing exactly the conditions there, I don't know whether these would be appropriate or not. But if indeed, this is a seep that is to this site, this may be the kind of treatment that we might be able to leverage. Now, the rock buttress is specifically to, this is a very civil engineering approach to addressing landslides, and the basic approach here is to provide sort of a triangular or trapezoidal buttress or wedge to hold back the existing soil that is uphill. So we essentially will come in and excavate out the loose material that is in the landslide area and stabilize that with basically a rock slope that goes down, connects with the bedrock below, and provides a very stable buttress or backdrop to the soils above. This is generally what a rock buttress looks like. You probably, if you've traveled the PA Turnpike, you've seen similar applications. This is a very typical PennDOT approach to this kind of seep.
how long does it last?
So these have been in place they've been applied across Pennsylvania for decades, and they're virtually unchanged in terms of their function. So in terms of the longevity of them, I would say we consume at least 50 years, if not longer. It's open graded rock, and so it provides. I'll just jump back real quick. It provides, so as there is seawater that is coming through the hillside, it picks it up and runs down to a drain at the base. And so that drain, this would essentially run along Haverhill. We'll be able to collect that seawater so it's not saturating the soils along the roadway, or it will also keep it off of the roadway, so it won't be leaching out into the streets where it creates icing conditions. And so these have proven quite successful. There are other methods of stabilizing soil that look a little differently. So we are looking at a couple of other alternatives. to stabilizing the soil that can be vegetated. So we have a vegetated solution. This can be done over top of a rock buttress, or it can be just a soil, basically a stabilized soil where we use synthetic fabrics in the soil to create resistance and basically stability to the soil. That can be topped with topsoil and planted. There's also sort of this geoweb structure that we can also implement. That geoweb structure limits the ability to do larger shrubby or tree species. And so that is something that we can do with the geotextile version. We talked a little bit about the seep mitigation. So not only is there seep water that we're addressing at the landslide site, but also laterally along Haverhill Street, there are seeps that are coming down. And so the solution, the upper right corner there, or your upper left, is basically it's a rock blanket that runs along the edge of the road that drains down to a perforated drain pipe that can convey that seep water below the surface of the streets, so that we're not having that again, the ice condition and erosion of the asphalt. We also, as part of this project, have discussed repaving Haverhill Street and regrading it slightly. So one of the issues identified is erosion of the hillside to the west of Haverhill. We want to keep water off of the soils and the rock face to the left, and really bring the water over back to this edge. And so we're looking at regrading, creating a new sort of process
In the bathroom.
that we're able to capture and contain the stormwater along Haverhill. Part of that will be new paving and a new asphalt wedge curb. So once we're able to address, utilize both the seep and the landslide, then we look at what are our options for renovating the existing stormwater planters on Haverhill or at Oakwood Batavia. Generally, we're sticking with the overall layout of the system. We're just trying to renovate it, but we're really focusing on how, particularly at the front ends or sort of the capture points of both the flow enters here, the Oakwood planter, and enters there on the Batavia planter, enhancing those forebays to be able to manage the level and degree, even though attempting to address the erosion that's occurring on Haverhill and the landslide impacts, there's still a tremendous amount of sediment and debris that come into these. And so really trying to improve the ability to maintain and operate these systems over the long term. So enhancing the forebays, providing the reflective delineators that were originally spec'd for this project, but also potentially extending them out and providing a little bit more advanced warning, line striping. We're planning to replant replace the soils and replant each of the planter beds, and we'll just go into a little bit more detail here. So we're currently looking at an improved design. So the sediment forebay, they're going to be expanded somewhat. We're going to the preliminary design. We're looking at sort of a multi-tiered, multi-stage sediment and debris capture. So part of that includes a grading that allows the large coarse debris to be captured at the surface on this grading material. And then we have a multi-stage filter weir. So we have an improved filter weir design that we've implemented at other sites in the city of Pittsburgh that has worked well for us, utilizing this filter block material that allows water to collect and sediment settle out over a short period of time, and then that forebay drains down, so that water drains down into the system. We also looked at the planter walls. One of the issues that we had with the construction of the planters at Oakwood Batavia, the design that we use, which had been proven in other communities, Portland, Philadelphia, relied on sort of a back, what we call a batter or a slight slope to the walls, but it is not as resilient to overturning, particularly if it's not constructed exactly correctly. So other projects we've implemented a wall with a L footing, which allows those walls to stay vertical, and it's a more resilient and structurally sound wall. As you can see, we've noticed that there's rotation of the existing walls at the Oakwood Batavia site. As I said before, on the traffic safety standpoint, the proposal is to add additional line striping and reflective delineators, as well as potentially a caution lane shift sign to give drivers advance notice of the oncoming bump out. There tends to be, we certainly, it's been reported that speeds are higher than, there's definitely speeding that occurs on this site. And so we want to make sure that at the very least, that the site and the infrastructure is as visible as possible to drivers who are coming around particularly the bend on Oakwood.
Is there any chance of doing traffic calming measures? Well, I'm say upstream here, but farther down, like speed humps or?
I don't know if so I would say, this is something, this is a site that we're just starting to discuss, particularly with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. Now that there's a preliminary design to sort of suggest initial strategies, we're really focused on the infrastructure itself. But I think that there's an opportunity to evaluate the sort of the street itself.
Yeah, because I know with the early childhood center just down the street, there are a lot of families that use that cut through to get to and from school with their small children, and it's very dangerous to cross there. But it's very near.
The problem
This
may
is-
be as far as a, speed bump
Yeah,
is the buses, because you've got a hill there. The buses can't do the speed bumps and pull the hill at the same time.
yeah, so,
We can talk to the check.
or some sort of crosswalk there or something, because it's, I know that gets to be tricky though with traffic
Sometimes
studies
they
and
put a
everything.
red light there,
What?
a red light.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, there is also the intersection at Kelly as well, is an opportunity. So as I said, we're at a stage where we now have some initial improvements to discuss and consider additional. And then last but not least, as I said before, we are going to be replacing the existing soils, the engineered soils that have been heavily impacted by sediments, debris, as well as oils from the sites. We have a fresh start with new species. We do have some of the existing plants that have actually survived through all of this. It's pretty remarkable. So we definitely want to leverage them as much as possible. But we also want to acknowledge that some of the species require a bit more effort to keep them contained. So while they are thriving, they also at times might extend into the sidewalk or into the street and have to be cut back. So we are examining species that should also thrive. So we're considering species that should also thrive in this kind of environment, but maybe have a slightly shorter stature or able more easily maintained within an environment. We still want to create, to the extent possible, as beautiful, as functional a system as possible. So generally speaking, we're relying on native species that are adapted to our environment. with as little input as possible, but also provide habitat for our native pollinators as well. So in terms of the overall intended outcomes, just to sort of repeat, back, the intention of this project is to stabilize the landslide, remediate the seep that caused the landslide, improve the street conditions on Haverhill to the extent practical, improve the drainage there so that we are creating a safe and sustainable condition, and then ultimately. Oh.
Shouldn't have touched it.
But ultimately, to restore the function and form and beauty and the stormwater capture capacity of the green infrastructure system at Oakwood. So I think we have time for questions. I will just say that we'll answer questions now, but after the project, if you have questions about the design, you can always reach out to Ryan Quinn, the project manager at PwSA, sort of general education and outreach related general project questions to Elaine. And PwSA maintains a website on this project, which will continue to post updates on as the project progresses. As I said before, I think we said earlier, we are at the preliminary design stage, so we're about 30% of the way through the design process before we go to sort of final bidding and construction of the project. So we have a little ways to go yet. We wanted to share where we are. We've already gotten great feedback in terms of things that we might have missed, things that we hadn't thought of. So I'd like to open it up to others who might have ideas and feedback on things that observations that we may have missed or comments on what we've developed.
Thanks, Barton. So we do have one note in the chat from Tanya. It says, glad to see you're addressing and call her. I'll stop reporting the backup. Tanya, would you be able to share more information about that backup that you're experiencing?
It was the sewer at the intersection of Bennett and Collier. They had worked on it several times, but when we have heavy downfall, it backs up. Beg your pardon? It backs up until like halfway across the street. So what I saw in the screen, you're going to address it and make a runoff or in that area? Is that what that picture was indicating?
That's not Benedict Collier.
No? That wasn't Benedict Collier?
No, that ain't Benedict Collier.
Well, the picture's gone now, but the picture I was looking at was the intersection of Bennett and Collier.
That's not Benedict Collier. That is Oakwood.
Okay, well, there's a real issue.
It's not Bennett.
That's Oakwood.
Okay, well, there's a real bad issue at Bennett and Collier still then.
Well, they ain't got nothing to do with Benedict Collier. That's Oakwood.
Well, okay, well, I'm sorry, I misidentified the area. But there's an issue at Bennett and Collier.
Okay. We still appreciate the identification of problem areas. So just to clarify, you were saying that you've reported a sewer backup in the street or
Right on the corner where the water's supposed to drain in the sewage. I've been doing that for the last couple of years.
that's not Benedict Collier though.
The one I'm referring to is, I understand what you said about the picture wasn't that. But
That's Oakwood.
I understand what you said. But I am referring to Bennett and Collier. There is an issue there.
Okay.
Okay.
Definitely appreciate like getting notifications. There's a couple ways to follow up, but we're happy to do that after the meeting, follow up with. I know just probably over the last 5 years that I've seen the stormwater program grow, and we've had a lot of issues with intense rainfalls, like basement backups. We've been creating a database, and so we'll have to go back and look to see if that issue's already been reported and sort of where it stands. But yeah, separate in this project.
I have a question. How does that affect Haverhill?
No, how does Haverhill affect Oakwood is the question.
So,
Yes, that's important. Let's call it the Haverhill project though. So how does it affect Haverhill?
Yes, how does it affect Haverhill Street? Because before the
I
water
live
leaks
on Haverhill Street, so I know that. So how does it
Or-
affect Haverhill Street? But we
or
call
it
it
leaks Oakwood Street, it leaks on the Haverhill Street. So we're just asking, how does it
Haverhill
affect?
leaks down to Oakwood Street.
so this is the high point up, so Haverhill Street drains down to Oakwood, and then Oakwood
Yes.
drains intersection of Oakwood and Batavia. And up here is where the landslide occurred, and
Yes, I know.
that's carried sediment down to this intersection. And so what we're trying to do is stabilize that landslide area, and
Okay.
address the erosion and drainage issues on Haverhill so that it's no longer impacting the Oakwood Batavia Green Infrastructure Site, so that it can focus on managing the stormwater that otherwise is draining down Oakwood Street and down Batavia Street to this site.
Okay.
Yeah, but all the basements on Oakwood Street, on Haverhill are full of water because of this other river that y'all got running up here.
From the
Pittsburgh,
landslide.
3 rivers no more, it's 4 rivers, because the other river is running on Haverhill Street all day long.
So that's an important point that I definitely want to capture. So do you know specific addresses or specific houses that are getting seep water or consistent water in their basement? Certainly.
606 Haverhill, the house all the way at the top of the hill, 624 or 620. If you go up behind that building on Oakwood, 500, what is that, 600 Oakwood Street, that whole building, the water's just running down there all day. The hillside is literally falling over down there. It's going to be another landslide. Even the city steps are moving.
So these city steps you've seen moving?
Yeah, yes. If you go up there, even the guardrail that's on Haverhill Street is literally falling over the hillside.
Yeah, so that was one of our recommendations is to relocate the guardrail and effectively we would be reducing the width of Haverhill to some extent to a more to make sure that roadway is in a stable location and construction.
Okay.
And when is this supposed to start? Because the road hasn't been paved in what, 20 years, 25 years?
So the timelines or the arc of the project, we started with site investigation this spring. We just completed the preliminary design. The intention is to finish final design by the end of this year. And then we go out to bid in the spring. And construction, presumably would occur sometime.
You're saying a year now, a year.
The construction would be next summer.
Okay.
Okay. Cause I even had to change my vehicle because anything low riding, it'll tear the transmission out that thing. So you gotta have a 4-wheeler to even get up there, especially in the wintertime. It's just a solid, it's like.
Yeah, because the whole street just turns into a whole sheet of ice.
I have a crazy question to ask. Have you thought about doing a Lego demonstration type of thing versus that up on the wall? Because a Lego gives you 3D. It allows people better. Yeah.
A 3D model.
Especially with the water running. When the water runs, it ices the whole street up, and you can't even get up the street. You scared to even drive up the street because you might slide over the hillside.
Yeah, so the drainage, the collection of that seep water is one of the fundamental objectives of this project, is to capture.
Okay.
Part of the function of, so when the rock buttress is installed in the landslide area,
Okay.
is likely to create basically attract, I don't want to say all of the water, but it will certainly attract much of the water that is seeping through this hillside over here, because it's going to create a low point back in here. And pipe along Haverhill Street. So of water that's coming all the way out to the edge of the roadside. But even if it does, we will have a seed blanket there and drainage pipe to collect that.
Okay.
I will also say that the design to date, we have done what we call a geotechnical investigation to evaluate the soils and the bedrock and the stability of the sites. We are still waiting for our final recommendations from our geotechnical partners who are doing that work. So they specifically focus on soil and rock. And they are going to be providing us with a report in the next week. We weren't able to present those results today. It's not likely that our design will change much based on that, but it will help us to refine our approach to addressing these drainage and landslide issues.
Okay.
I have a question. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, is there an underground spring on Haverhill Street?
Yes, so that is essentially to our assessment, the root cause of the landslide, and as well as the water seepage issues that we're seeing on Haverhill. So there's water that is moving along. A little hard to tell from this image, and I know to see suggested that we show this in a 3D up here on which these houses sit. The water is actually coming out and emanating right around the same level as that bench, and then draining down the hillside and saturating these soils. So there's basically a layer of bedrock that the water is moving along and seeping out. Intersect that with the rock buttress and seep blanket.
Okay, because they're saying stormwater, but this water runs all year long, whether there's a storm or not.
Yeah, so that's an important observation. So, and we have to think about them, unique. So this project is both addressing, the groundwater, spring and seep issues, that are happening, continuously. We know that the sort of the volume and the rate of water, that comes out of the hillside varies throughout the year, but for the most part, is active for almost the entire year. And that constant flow, is something that we have to manage differently, than how we manage stormwater. So we're kind of, separating them. We're addressing the seep water, which is up here, and the stormwater with another type of system down here.
Okay.
So how will y'all, because across from the barriers that y'all have on Haverhill Street, part of the sidewalk already fell, and that was probably around 2006 or 7, where part of Haverhill Street already fell down onto the vacant lot that's on Oakwood Street next to that apartment building. So how will that be reinforced?
So, that's a good question.
The hillside already fell. The hillside already fell.
Yes, and we've seen that. You can see there are, chunks of the original, sidewalk, down the hillside.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that we want to maintain, pedestrian connectivity along Haverhill. We know that Haverhill is very
It's about Haverhill.
low. There's very, very little traffic on it. But we do want to maintain the ability to traverse the stairs, go up Haverhill and connect to the stairs that go up to the next street. And so as part of the repaving and regrading of Haverhill, we are proposing at this time to replace that section of sidewalk that is the existing house, but we are going to end the sidewalk at I don't think I have a picture of it in this slide set, but there's a telephone pole, a utility pole right by that house. The area where we are not going to continue the sidewalk beyond there. It will basically, the sidewalk will just go the steps to, at least as it's proposed, from the top of the steps to that existing house. And then from there, roadway will provide means of getting to the next set of steps at the end of Haverhill.
Will they reinforce Sanger also? Because that's above. That's the street above Haverhill.
So in our investigation of the seep and soil conditions, we did not identify any contributions coming from above. And certainly if there have been, if folks have observed flow coming from Haverhill, we would certainly like to,
Yeah, because that'll shift it. Because if it's doing like that, that's when the earth's moving, that up top's going to move also.
So the intention of the strategy of installing the rock buttress is to stabilize, is to address the seep. I'm gonna, oh, sorry, wrong computer.
To address what?
So this strategy is basically we are filling the area of where the landslide occurred. This rock buttress collects the seep water and brings it into drain that connects to the sewer system. So we pulled that seep water to the drain so that the soils are no longer saturated, but we also support the soils that are up the hill so that they forward. This sort of triangle or wedge of rock provides the support to prevent the hillside from moving. So we're addressing both the drainage and also the soil stability together with the rock.
Okay.
Yeah, so the soil stability from Singer to Haverhill to Oakwood is not stable. And I heard you say that Haverhill Street is not used a lot, but it's not being used as of some years because the conditions of the road with the ice not being able to get up there, even the city salt trucks can't get up there. You know, it's dangerous, the mud slides and all of that other stuff. So it could be used more, but it's unsafe to even walk on that street, park on that street, even living on that street. And this water's been running for over 20 years and it's just now being addressed. So I want to know if there have been structural engineers to look at the property on Haverhill Street and above Haverhill and under on Oakwood Street, because there can be more damage than what y'all are saying as far as stormwater drainage. Because this street and this water has been running for over 20 years.
Yeah, so so an important part of the work that we're doing, the investigation that we're doing, is really looking carefully at the condition of the soils and the rock. We aren't looking individually at private homes. That was part of this project. You know, I understand that there might be that there is potentially you know, structural issues with some of the private homes that I'm not aware of, but really the focus of this project was trying to stabilize the situation on the city lot, which is also impacting our neighbors, and making sure that the roadway is brought back to a functional level that's really where we can maintain that roadway to be safe for both pedestrian and vehicle traffic to get up and down Haverhill Street and make the connections beyond.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope
Neighbors
it works.
that are
I hope
neighbors
it works
that
because Oakwood Street, Haverhill Street, and Singer Place, if it keeps moving, they're all gonna be one street.
I guess what I'm so if and sorry, this is the perfect opportunity. You know, we get a chance to hear from you all what observations that you've made or you've seen. If you've observed movement, particularly on Singer Place or the properties along Singer Place, if homeowners are seeing issues there that we have not observed, you know, I would love to be able to get those detailed. So I don't know if we have the opportunity to folks' contact information to get sort of more details on this. You know, we're certainly going to.
Yeah, we seen the landslide. We seen it when it slid. We got pictures of the landslide when it slid into the middle of the street. So, but we understand. We understand.
So this is, you know, we're still in.
Can they put their information in the chat and you guys get it out of it?
Yeah, I guess, Elaine, how do you typically handle that?
Yeah, so for those of you who are on a computer, you're welcome to private message me in the Zoom chat. And then for those of you who are on the phone, you could either you could call or text me your contact information, or you could email it to me. My cell phone number for my work cell phone is 412-738-1037. 1887. And address is EHINRICHS@pgh20.com. And I can also put that in the chat. So that's a way for you to contact me, but you can also go to our project webpage, which is Haverhill, and my information is on that webpage as well. If you want to share your contact information privately.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
There questions? Comments, observations?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I have one more observation. If you go up the street all the way to up Haverhill Street to a pair of city steps to take you up the Singer, looking straight ahead is like a trail that takes you directly above the street called Batavia, where you can look down.
Yeah, there's like a that continues on, Haverhill kind of, could have extended on, is that what you're referring
So
to?
there, if you walk all the way to the end of Haverhill, there is a set of city steps that will take you to Singer Place. But if you walk straight ahead in front of those city steps, there's a trail that you can walk through that'll take you directly. You'll be looking down directly onto Batavia Street.
Yeah. Is there something in particular that you've observed from up there?
Yes, because that part of the hill has been sliding also, and on the side, when you come down Oakwood and you make a right onto Batavia, there's a little alleyway as soon as you turn the corner that sits on the right. So as soon as you come down Oakwood, make a right on Batavia Street, there's a little alley that sits there. And that street also had where the land was sliding and falling all down on the street. So all of that back there has slid over the years.
Yeah, we've definitely observed, move of particularly the topsoil eroding along this edge, all along Haverhill, and that's definitely one of the things that we're looking at. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, so when will the results for everything come in? Like everything y'all observed, all the information y'all collected.
So I apologize, I don't have it quite to memory. We do have a second community meeting planned, and I believe it is, I can't remember what it is on the new schedule, but it will be later it would either be late this year or early next year for
just add to what Mark, when we do come out of today's meeting, we'll have a meeting summary posted and we'll kind of summarize some of the next steps. So if there's like key observations that we made during the meeting, we'll highlight those. And then when we do our next meeting, we'll kind of revisit that to show that, what we did to address them. In the meantime, we can do one-on-one follow-ups as well.
Okay.
That'll be a finalize of what you're going to do prior to doing it.
I think it remains to be seen. We scoped this up to try to start having those conversations and then one pre-construction meeting, considering the size of this project, that was what we planned. But we can, adjust that.
I think,
Something we'll have to
I
discuss.
think you might want to adjust it to 3 meetings to kind of go along with past history of doing the meeting as now a second meeting with some of the ideas incorporated that people have given you and a third meeting of what you're prior to doing the community. It makes people happier and it makes a healthier project for you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So we'll definitely.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Hey guys on the phone. Community, you guys are the main people in the community. My suggestion would be that you make sure you get contact information and then contact you before that second meeting. And you guys go out door knocking and some talking to your neighbors and get as many people on the next meeting as at all possible.
Okay.
And I actually, this is Elaine, I have to apologize. So normally for these community meetings, I mail out a postcard and I found out yesterday that the postcard never went into the mail. So normally you would be receiving a postcard also before the meeting. I know I sent out a robocall that some of you may have received, and then we also sent out email notifications earlier this month through our community organizations. But normally you would get some more notice and information directly in your mailbox about these community meetings, and that process fell apart this time through the mail. So that is also helpful if you have neighbors who are maybe not home when you're knocking on their doors. They'll be getting.
Okay.
So I will also say, I think I said this before, but I'll say it again, we very much appreciate the comments and insights with the issues on the site. We try to be as detailed in our investigations as possible, but no amount of being on the site is going to give us the same amount of eyes on this or the history with the site as you all. So we really appreciate you taking the time to discuss this with us. I hope we have an opportunity to connect again to get a little bit more of your thoughts and insights.
Thank you.
Were there any other chat questions that came through?
Not that I've seen. Yeah, does anyone have any more questions that they'd like to ask over the phone or audio or in the chat?
No.
Okay. Well, again, my phone number, if you want to call or text me with your contact information, is 412-738-1887. And my email address is ehinrichs@pgh2o.com. And then the project webpage is www.pgh2o.com/Haverhill.
Huh?
If no one has any more questions, I'll let you, we can end the meeting now, just 3 minutes early, and I'll let you all get back to your night. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing the information that you have. We really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.